have you back on the podcast. It's been an interesting time for both of us. I think the past 2 months. Um, but yeah, great to have you back on.
Thanks, Joe. I really appreciate being on here and had a lot of, had a blast last time I was on here. So, really excited to kind of jump into the topic today.
Yeah, it's interesting. A lot of people that I have on always tell me that they kind of like prefer my format of an interview compared to some other people in the space, right? Because a lot of the other people they'll do like a 2 hour recording with someone and they'll chop it up into 45 minutes, and it's like whenever I hear that, it's like, guys, you're not you're not doing anyone any justice. If you're going to record for 2 hours, it should be pretty close to 2 hours to really get that feel for the person. But at least that's my opinion. I mean, there's other more successful podcasts out there than mine, right? So who am I to tell them that they're doing something wrong?
You know what? That sounds true, Joe, but I would say go the opposite way and just go full force into the direction you're going into because it's more authentic. Um, you're not, saying, "Hey, we'll fix that in post. We'll fix that in post."
Yeah,
It keeps it real for everybody, and I think that's what we're all looking for is for something real. And we all enjoy security, but we're also human beings who do stuff outside of security. So try to find a way in the middle of those two, and I think
right.
that's where you start to kind of attract the right people.
Yeah. Yeah, well, Peter, you made a LinkedIn post today about you starting about a e-learning series, right? So what's all of that about? Give me the 1,000 foot view of why people should dive into it and who it's really made for and that sort of thing.
Absolutely, yeah. So I would say the idea just kind of came out of nowhere. We have a mutual friend that I was helping out, and he was trying to develop some just source material to help educate the masses on specific areas of security. So we were kind of kicking around some ideas, and I really wanted to think of some ideas that were not thought of before, which is a challenging thing to do, but uh, it's one of those things where you just go onto Google and you're like, hey, I want to learn about this from in this area. What's available? What's the most popular? And I did this same for myself with security and started to realize that there isn't a lot of polished material out there. And it's not a dig to anybody out there. It's just, I kind of like what we were just saying. How do we keep it real? Keep it about the topic of security, but like I said, keep it interesting, entertaining. So that's where I said, hey, I'm going to start developing my own e-learning series. And the first, topic that I wanted to jump into was executive briefings for security professionals. And it's a near and dear topic to my heart because it's one of those that I actually had to go through and suffer through the pitfalls and you know get that harsh feedback from your CISO to say your message didn't get across. You used too many pictures that didn't matter with your presentation. You lost the message. So I was kind of just swimming out in the middle of the ocean, just trying to figure out, what direction I should go in. And I don't want anyone else to go through that. That was a really tough time. I got my bun toasted a couple times, to say it the nice way. But yeah, to focus on the security presentations, for leadership, people who want to become CISOs, directors, and don't want to just have the role. They want to actually do things while they're, being that director, being that change in their organization. So I developed a 7 module series for executive briefings, which goes through kind of different topics on how to improve your game. So like starting from framing, cybersecurity to business terms, storytelling skills, what metrics to use, all these different things to help you start crafting your story and doing it in a very sharp, concise way where executives are just lapping it up. They're eating it up. They just, hey, you're making my job easier. I thought I would have to work harder. all I have to do is sign yes, thank you, moving on. And it's how they go. They're very our executives are very red type, as in, be fast, be good, be gone.
Hmm.
And that's what I really want to teach, in the series.
Yeah, that is something that a lot of people struggle with, even managers and directors and whatnot, right? Like they even struggle with it quite a bit, and especially that gap, right, going from a technical role into a more leadership role. That bridge there of trying to explain too thoroughly of what's going on, right? Not being concise enough is always an issue, and it actually took um, a CISO of mine that kind of took the time and sat down and was like, "Look, this is exactly what I'm looking for, and this is why I'm looking for it, because I want to take this, copy and paste it into this big old slide deck that I have, and I want to talk about you for 2 minutes. That's it. That's all I want to do, and it has to be high level stuff. Everyone in the room has to be able to understand it, right? Like this is the board, the CEO, the CTO. None of them are technical. None of them have a technical background. And that really started to kind of shift my perspective, right? Because when I wanted to go to my CISO for something or provide him a status update on this big project that I'm working on, right? I always present it now in a way to where if he needed to or wanted to present it to someone in upper management above him, right? I want him to just copy and paste it, make it as easy as possible. And like, he may get a little bit more technical with me on the side, to learn the nuances of it, but it should never be, that like in depth, in the weeds view, I guess, when you're talking to the executives, because they just need to know what they need to make a decision about.
Yeah, and they'll let you know when you're going the wrong way too.
Yeah.
You could lose the room very quickly uh, with one slide. You could not even get into your introductory paragraph of what you're about to say. You could just throw up a slide, and then no one's listening to you. Everyone's looking at your, you know, 20 million metrics within a little square view, of trying to understand, like, what is this kid talking about.
Yeah.
So I don't want others to go through that, like I was saying before, because you could really kind of um hard or really kind of hurt your reputation at the organization you work for with one bad meeting. And
Hmm.
it's really tough to kind of put it like that and just be so you know dead cut about it, but it's true. um, Especially when you're a security professional in your enterprise and you're not earning trust within the first couple minutes. um, they're not going to listen to you. More things are going to pile up on your end. You're going to get a breach, and then, hey, why weren't you doing your job? And it's like, I was trying to do my job. I had all these meetings, and it's like, I didn't hear that. That wasn't the message that you delivered to me. And it's just like, I got to get better at this.
Yeah. Yeah, it's challenging if you've never done it before, and I think one of the benefits that maybe this podcast inadvertently gave me was getting used to speaking with executives, right? I mean, like I talk with everyone. I talk with successful CEOs and founders, CISOs that everyone would know, um, so it forces you to kind of get used to it and not be like awestruck, right? Because a lot of the times when you're the lower level and you're talking to the CTO or the CEO or whatever it might be, you're nervous more of because of the status of the person, in the room, right? And that kind of it was interesting, right? I can't even remember who it was with. It was the CEO of some large organization that was coming on the podcast, and I was real nervous going into the talk and whatever else, right? And my friend, just asked me a real simple question, right? That kind of like broke it down real easy for me. He's like, "Well, you know, what color's their blood when they bleed?" I was like, "Red." He's like, "Okay, do they speak English?" I'm like, Yeah. He's like, okay, are they human? Like, yeah. He goes, then what's the problem? They're another person. Like, just broke it down like that, right? And it was
Jeez.
fascinating. Yeah, because I kind
Jeez.
of I carry that now, right? Like I've done a lot of podcasts with, spies from the CIA, from Israel. I'm gonna bring on, a former Russian spy at some point. I got more coming on,
Wow.
right?
That's so
Um,
cool.
yeah, it's a really cool thing. It's really easy to get intimidated though, right? Because these people, they're one in a billion, right? I mean, they're not like falling off trees, right? Like you don't run into these kind of people every time, right? Or all day. And it's just interesting to have those conversations. And I could like psych myself out before even going into it, And but I want to circle back, right? Because I do recall this is fairly recently, within the past 2 years, right? My CTO wanted to like have a call basically with all of the tech leads and the architects on the call and have them like present, what we're all working on and the progress that we're making and stuff like that, right? And it was fascinating because my architect, kicked off the security portion, right? And he was the longest part of the entire security portion. And he was basically just kicking it off, giving a program overview, right? And it gets to me, and I mean, maybe it was a dig at him, maybe, but I started it off with saying like, I promise this will be 2 minutes. Don't worry, like kind of just like setting the expectation right there, and then and it was only like 2 minutes, whatever it was, but very concise, very to the point, very much he could take this slide, put it into his slide deck, present it to the CEO, and be like, see, this guy who's running all of security, he's doing all of these things. This is the value it's providing to the organization. And at the end, the CTO called out me specifically for providing good information, didn't even call out anyone else in security, right? And I kind of like hung my hat on that, so to speak, for the day. It was like, all right, I did a good job. And moving on, because now I got to go interview some CISO, for a company.
You start to realize that, yeah, just the two things that you start to remove titles from people, and you then are able to communicate in a whole different, more open way. And you're not just thinking, this is the CEO of blah, this is the CISO of blah, like this is just a really cool person that has a cool story that I want to hear.
Yeah.
That's it. You keep it simple, and then you know your your heart rate starts to go down just a little bit. For me, it's, I would say, very small, because I'm always just kind of wired. So yeah, and then I would say the other thing, that you're touching upon too, was around keeping it concise, keeping it efficient. And what I've realized is that a lot of CEOs, CFOs, COOs, anybody at that C level looks at efficiency as number one. How do I whittle away minutes? How do I whittle away hours? How do I whittle away seconds? And if you're in a meeting with them, they've already kind of planned this in their head, like, I need to get X out of this within X amount or Y amount of time. And if you're not hitting that mark, that's where they think, I need somebody else to come in and do what I need them to do, because I have X amount of time and you're going over that time right now. And it's not to be rude, but given the demands of that position, that's what's needed. They
Hmm.
need to have that efficiency mindset where they're just like, instead of spending an hour on this, I need to spend 30 minutes. I need to spend 10 minutes, or I need to delegate this.
Yeah.
So if you're just, going on for 20 minutes, they're, on their phone, just like, huh? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's a great point. And I kind of realized that um several years ago, right? Where you start thinking of efficiencies of, how much, just simple math, right? How much do I make an hour, right? Is it going to take me, like, how much time is this thing going to take me? And I'll give you a great example. I'm redoing my website right now, and I'm terrible at it, like it's real bad. Because I'm not a website designer and I'm not that creative when I don't already have like design examples in front of me. And website creation, a lot of the times, like, yeah, you'll have templates and whatnot, but at the end of the day, someone that does this every single day is going to beat me 10 times out of 10, in terms of like design and flow and efficiency, right? And literally today, I had a call with my web designer, and I mean, 15 minutes into it, she was like, "Oh yeah, we'll get this all done in like 2, 3 hours, maybe." And I, gave her my budget and everything. She's like, "Yeah, don't even worry about it." And when I was starting to go down that path, right, the very first thing that I factored in was, okay, how much do I make an hour, right? How many hours is this going to take me? A very large amount because I'm not good at it, right? And can someone else just do it more efficiently even if I spend a little bit more money, right? Like, is their price going to beat out the amount of hours that I'm going to spend on it? And 100% it is, and you're going to get better quality out of it. Well, that's what these CISO or CEOs are thinking about in their head, right? Like, think about it like this: like, they they spend an hour or two at a board meeting, right, one time a quarter. I mean, they're looking for every bit of value for every single second to rationalize why they're there, right?
Hmm.
Because, you know, when you break it down to the what you're paid an hour perspective, you have to think you're paid that based on the value that you bring to the marketplace within that hour. It's not based on some fictitious number that people made up or that you came up with in your head or whatever. Like, it's like literally, no, every hour I am bringing this much value to the marketplace, and that may seem, you know a little bit astronomical, right? But when you factor in the amount of employees that the people are employing, when you factor in the amount of people from those employees that they're impacting, like their families, right, the kids and the extended families potentially and everything else like that, it's like, okay, that number becomes a little bit more realistic, right? It's just
Exactly. Yep.
something, it's something that I've used to frame it, right? Because it's like, okay, they're viewing time differently because, I mean, maybe they flew here on a helicopter, right? If you're in New York and you're doing a board meeting, right? Most of the board members probably got there on a helicopter, not via a car, you know?
Hmm. Exactly. Yeah. And it's the fact that they're always kind of looking at it from this lens of, I always use the factory scenario. They are given, this challenge of, hey, here's this factory, it outputs this much, here's all this machinery, these are the amount of people that you have. We want to up efficiency by 30%, or increase our output by 30%, but we're not going to give you more people, we're not going to give you more machinery. You're just going to have to move things around. You're going to have to come up with better ideas, and we need it by the end of the month.
Yeah.
So that's where you have to think like, I need maybe one less person and a better machine or a better conveyor belt that I could make go quicker. And that's when it could start to, you know, what you call tumble down into that area of thinking of everything's kind of like, I need to shift this, I need to make it more efficient, and you almost lose that personal touch from that. But then
Yeah.
you also have to know from the outside that's what they're constantly thinking all the time. They're always looking at this factory and thinking, I need to make this 30% better, I need to make this 50% better with what I have already.
Yeah.
So it's a difficult thing to do, especially when you have such a very small time frame to do it in.
Yeah, I read this book a couple years ago called Extreme Ownership from Jocko Willink, right? Former Navy
Mhm.
SEAL. I mean, he's known within the community, right, as being just, a real badass person, right?
Screenshots of his watch of 4:30 in the
Right.
morning
Right.
and telling and making me feel bad because I'm looking at that post
Because
at
I woke
12
up at
p.m.
yeah, yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
It's like, oh Jesus, this guy's
Oh,
already
I
lived
didn't even
one
do
life
anything.
before I got up.
Yeah. He's already worked out twice. But in his book, he discusses how he would have to go to his upper management and request different things, right? Like he'd have to request, whatever it might be, right? Like a tank or a drone or, whatever it is. And all of his counterparts, um, they would be requesting like everything under the sun. They would overkill a mission by 300, 400% of what they actually needed. They would have four times the men, they would have four times the weapons and the drones and everything, right? And he described how whenever he was, asked, what do you need, he would always say nothing. Like, we've got it, and that's because he's doing more with less. It's like, okay, well, let's figure out how to make this thing stretch farther, right? And he said the purpose behind that was that when I went to go and ask these people for something, they needed to know without a shadow of a doubt, I exhausted every other resource that I had, and now I truly need it. Like, it's not a maybe he doesn't need it. It's 100% he needs it. Let's go get it for him, and make it happen. And he said when he made that mentality switch, like, he never got denied anything, because it showed the urgency behind his own request without him having to, continuously badger people, right? And so
Hmm.
in security, I think we get into this mode where it's always, we need another tool, right? I need this brand new fancy EDR. I can't tell you how many times, right? People have asked me, what's the bare minimum that you need in the environment to make it secure, right? And it's like, give me a firewall, give me a SIM, give me an EDR, right? I'll figure everything else out, right? Because this is what you got to think of. Every other tool almost, or every other category, just makes things easier. That's all it does. It makes it easier, makes it more streamlined and optimized. That's what you're paying for. You're paying for that efficiency. But if we're talking like a true budget constrained environment, it's like, okay, let me just get the bare minimum. Let me sleep a couple more hours at night, right? Like, that
Yeah.
sort of
What
thing.
What are you solving for the business? You always have to frame it for the business. It's not about I want to be able to, you know, for all these crazy advanced attacks. And it's like, what is industry are you in? Do you have public facing servers? Are you even like on a risk register for that?
Yeah.
And then you start to be like, okay, you know, go back to the factory mindset. Like I said, what do I have in my factory right now, and what could I do to make it 30% better or 40% better?
Yeah. Yeah. And security is typically viewed by the board as like a black hole.
Oh yeah,
It's like,
we
hey,
don't
we're
make
throwing
any.
all this.
We are not cash revenue generating whatsoever. We suck money up.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting, the dynamics of it, and when you have someone, I feel like it's easy to get away or ahead of your skis with the security stacks. I mean, you can get so far in the weeds with this stuff, and I mean, you look at it,
Yes.
right? Wiz started 5 years ago, right? And they did CSPM, and they had like some nuanced container capabilities, right? And now they do everything under the sun, and they just got bought out by Google, right? And if you look at Wiz's offerings, actually, it it's like almost 100% of cloud security, and yet there's still 15 other pillars of cloud security that people are trying to sell you on, right? Like, it's like, guys, I could just consolidate all of your stuff with this one solution for a nominal cost.
It, exactly. Yeah, and there's some products that yeah, obviously I'm not going to name, but they have these scoring systems, and it's hilarious because
So
it's like
arbitrary.
you go through these scoring systems, and you're like, wait a minute, I have to purchase something to satisfy that, and that's factored into my scoring system. Like,
Yeah.
that sounds a little like greasy, if you ask me.
Yeah, let's not talk about yeah, whatever. Let's not forget to mention that the companies on the Gartner's Magic Quadrant pay Gartner to get on the Magic Quadrant, right? And then Gartner sells a subscription to companies for them to view the different domains and the top key players that pay to be put on this Magic Quadrant, right? So it's like, guys, it's
Yeah.
a it's a pay to play, pay to win game that you're trying to have right now, and like everyone's up on it, you know. Like I can't remember, man. I think the last the I mean, I had to present to, you know, the upper management, right? When I was trying to get a project, you know, cleared and everything, I had to like, you know, add in Gartner's Magic Quadrant and be like, see, it's on the Magic Quadrant. But that was all that I did. You know, I didn't care about a position or anything like that. I didn't put any value behind it because if they were to ask me, I'm going to be like, guys, it's pay to play. There's no real value behind this thing. The value is in the actual tool, you know?
Exactly. Yeah. It's supposed to be a guide to let you know about what's out there and, who they think may be performing the best. And like you said,
Right.
it's pay to play. So if you want to get your little dot, in that quadrant, you know, you gotta fess up the big bucks. So it's just like I said, everything needs to be taken with a grain of salt and contextualized for your enterprise, anyways. So when I look at the Magic Quadrant, like I would use it in the same way that you did, where it's just like, hey, I know I'm getting brand reputation, or they know what this means, and if Gartner agrees with me, then that helps my case even more. So it's like I'm playing this silly little game of, I'm going to manipulate you a little bit, but
Right.
you got to do what you got to do to, build a winning case because you said it's not like talking to your team. You're talking to it's a whole different language that you need to
Right.
convert to.
Right. How did you make that switch? You know, you kind of, I guess you kind of touched on it a little bit, right? And I'm probably going, you know, beyond whatever outline you prepared, right? Because I mean, little known fact, right? Like I don't prepare an outline, I don't prepare questions or anything else for my guests. I mean, like if you're really privileged and you know you were a spy or something, I'll prepare like two questions that are just like burning into my brain, right? But you operate a little bit differently, and so I know you have an outline, and so I'm derailing you from it. But what was that thing that kind of shifted your mindset into, okay, this is how I do it, and then probably a quarter later you figured out, okay, it was successful, or I got to tweak this, or whatever it might be.
It's embracing leadership because and I'm going to sound very gimmicky right now, but at the end of the day, you are representing your team and you're representing the company. You're representing a lot of different things. And if you're not getting your initiatives across, you're letting down not only the enterprise, but you're letting down your analysts, your
Hmm.
engineers. You're making their lives harder. So there's a lot of people counting on you. And when you don't follow through, it's noticed. And I've had moments where I did not follow through and made my life harder for everyone around me. And that was just because I didn't know how to convey my message in a efficient way to the my target audience. I was getting too technical. I was taking too much time. Presentations up to 40 minutes. It's like, no, you can't do that. So once I was able to start, really kind of like one, I would say just listening to the leaders around me, really kind of taking note of what they were doing, how they were finding success, and kind of like copying it in a way. So I had a couple CISOs that really helped me um, craft my message, or we always kept on saying how to craft your story. How what are the key points that you want to emphasize in your story? And then how are you going to this is where I'm going to start, stop talking about PowerShell logging and start talking about the return on investment for the product. Start talking about what are our, competitors doing in the security market as well too, because sometimes you know, you're getting customers based on the fact that you are a super secure company. And they may go with a different company because you had a qualification on your SOC 2. So that's where, like I said, I really kind of put a stake in the ground and said, hey, I'm going to get better at this. I'm going to dedicate myself to becoming this leader to where I could translate the technical of everything we're doing into a business context to where I could bring it to my executives and just make their life easy, bring them options and literally like, what button should I press? Push the second button. It's like, cool.
Yeah.
And that's all it is. It like I said, it takes a lot of practice and confidence in yourself. But I'd say the first step is to embrace leadership, embrace the position you're in, and really, give it your all when you are, hunting down your initiatives and, seeking that, you know, budget to make a difference.
Hmm. Yeah, that is it's interesting what, experiences will teach you, right? And I feel like people are always worried about, failing, right? Especially failing publicly. I mean, my gosh, like, man, the amount of times that I've failed publicly, and when we met, we were working for a company that, they had I mean, really, they had a vital product to whatever company bought the product. I mean, like, you can't, if you had a need to buy that product, it's probably a legal requirement. So you have to have a product of that, same category in your environment. And it's required to be up like at all times, and that culture really cultivated, a mentality of, oh, I made a mistake, I need help, right? And, and I mean, the amount of times that I accidentally did something that I didn't even, I didn't realize that that command was going to do something, it was completely unintended, and I had to quickly realize, oh, I'm completely out of my depth here, right? Raise my hand and be like, I need an adult. you know I mean, that was the term that we used. I need someone here that's more experienced than me that can help me with this. And I mean, you always could tell if I really went down a bad rabbit hole, if when, like, the developer that wrote the code is hovering over my desk, you know, and at some point he's just like, give me the keyboard. Like, give me the keyboard. I can't even explain how to fix this. Like,
It's like, yes, sir. Please take
yeah,
over. Thank you.
exactly, exactly. I mean, it was really interesting times, right? But like that situation, cultivates an experience or a mentality where it's like, oh, hey, I need help, right? Like, you learn how to fail publicly in front of other people, like, immediately. And there was people on that team that were not very well liked, that didn't last very long there because they weren't willing to raise their hand and be like, "Hey, I messed up," and announce it to the whole team, right? Like, I think me and you were one of the few people that were, like, willing to raise our hand, announce it to everyone, "Hey, I messed up in this giant way," because that was the only way that we were gonna learn. Yeah, like, that's how it
Yeah.
was.
Yeah. It's funny when you bring stuff like that too. It's almost like post traumatic stress disorder when you're just thinking like, oh yeah, I remember that one time. Oh, when I was on a customer support and I asked them to do something and then they reset all the admin passwords in the entire organization, and then it's like the next day they find out and everyone's just, hey, Peter was on support. It was Peter. And it's just like, no, 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 whoa, whoa, no, 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 no. Like, I don't,
Yeah,
oh my God. It's like, all right, here's what happened. Here's what I did. Like I'm not trying to, protect myself. I just want everything to be back to where it was.
yeah,
So it's just try to even remove myself as an individual. It's like I just want this to happen for the organization. This is what I've tried, help me out. And that's I think it's a valuable lesson is that you need to ask for help. You,
right,
you just have to ask for help when you need it. You could spin your wheels as much as you want by yourself, but then you realize when you ask for help, hey, I could have saved 2 hours. And we're all human. I do it myself, especially with the learning series and working on the creative side of the slides. My lord, I've had to go back a million times and redo stuff and go on YouTube, ask my girlfriend, ask my friend to review it. Is my head straight? Am I loud enough? So it's really important to just get third party feedback when you're doing anything, honestly, because um, there people are going to see things that you don't, and you're
Yeah.
just going to have to accept that early on.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Peter, we're coming up to the top of our time here, but before I let you go, how about you tell, my audience where they could find that e-learning series and where they could find, you on social media if they wanted to reach out and connect.
Yeah, fantastic. There's going to be two places. I have a new YouTube channel called Pram Corp Productions, and that's where the channel will be for my e-learning series. They're going to be put into playlists. So as of right now, there's an intro to the e-learning series for executive briefings for security professionals, and then module one, understanding your audience. So it's going to be in YouTube, Pramcore Productions, and then you can find me on LinkedIn. um, I'm just linkedin.com in P Ramadan. Very easy. I have a bunch of different articles and content that you could check out there. And yeah, just feel free to message me if anyone wants to contact and collaborate, just talk about stuff. I'm really want to get engaged in the community, and I want to thank you, Joe, for helping me do that.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, everyone listening, the links, will be in the comments or the description somewhere in there, right? So go check it out. Make sure, you check out the content and whatnot. I'm sure is extremely helpful. I haven't looked at it just yet, right? Because it was released today. But cut me some slack here. So yeah. Well, thanks, Peter, for coming on, and everyone listening or watching. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Cool. Were you able to hear me for like the whole beginning?